Now, as Autism Awareness Month continues, this morning we are trying to seek a better understanding of the bonds of special needs relationships. I'm joined by the founder and director of Support Autism Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Radica Mahase. Good morning, Dr. Mahase.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on your program.
Thank you very much for joining me. I'll start by asking you, in one of your latest articles, you suggested that we should recognize and celebrate the unique bond that develops between people with special needs and their siblings. But how do we even go about recognizing such a bond and perhaps even learning to appreciate such relationships?
Nice question. You see, most of the times siblings tend to be taken for granted. You know, the focus in the family is on the persons with special needs, the person with a disability, in this case, autistic persons. The focus tend to be on them because their care is so demanding to some extent. And many siblings tend to feel left out. They tend to feel isolated. They tend to feel unappreciated. That's one case. The other case is the situation where many siblings would actually grow up and they would be very close to their special needs siblings, and they would become their protector and they would become their advocate. And we want to lean towards the one where they become advocates and they become protectors and they have that special relationship. And I think the first step in doing that is making sure that all the children within the family is given the same amount of attention and the same amount of care and appreciation. That once the parents start focusing solely on the autistic child, and then the sibling will start to feel left out. So it's very important for parents to really make the extra effort to include the other child in every way possible, and to include the other child, the neurotypical sibling, in all aspects of the care of the autistic child. That's the very first step that we need to take. The second step is to make sure that we have some kind of training and some kind of programs in place so that the neurotypical siblings would be given a chance to learn about the autistic siblings, to be able to understand and appreciate them, and to eventually become advocates.
Now, you're saying that we need to recognize these relationships, even trying to get to that point where we're advocates, where there's that relationship where parties involved seek that comfort from each other. But if there is an individual or a sibling which does not necessarily recognize the needs of their autistic brother or sister, and they can't find a common place of understanding, or there's even an age gap, how are we to be even equal in parents giving attention equally to their children?
But that's the thing, right? You don't need to be close to age, and you don't need to have some kind of common ground. As long as you have a brother or sister and you spend time with them and you do things together, whatever that may be, whether it's something that the autistic child might like or whether something the neurotypical sibling might like, that bond will develop. And I mean, I really don't think you need to have common interests. There are many neurotypical siblings who may not have common interests, but they develop a close relationship. And it should be the same with an autistic sibling. Nothing should take away from that. Autism shouldn't take away from that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's often spoken about the social stigma in today's society, that exists in today's society of those with autism. In trying to break such social stigma, autism doesn't necessarily have a look. And in fact, people often go and say, well, that individual doesn't look normal. But what does normal look like versus what does autism look like if autism doesn't have a look? How do we break such social stigma?
Autism look like you and I. It look like any neurotypical person. You can't look at someone and say that this person is autistic. I mean, there are so many autistic persons who are on the higher end of the spectrum who go about their life. They communicate verbally. They might be able to interact socially. It just means that they might have challenges in other ways that neurotypical persons don't have. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you have those who, might need to stim might have repetitive behavior, and you can look at them and say, okay, well, definitely that child has a developmental problem, a developmental issue, a developmental delay. But on the other hand, those who don't, you can't tell. And that's where that general understanding comes in, where we don't judge people because they might do something differently, or that they might be not interested in something that neurotypical people are not interested in. So that's where that whole concept of being different is okay comes in, that if not everybody have to like everything. You know, in the case of Trinidadians, not everybody have to be a bandwagonist. So everyone should be allowed to like what they want, to act as they want. I mean, within reason, of course, or within legal reason, I should say. Everything else doesn't count. And that's where the social stigma comes in. The social stigma comes in because when you see somebody who is not doing something that we consider normal, we are quick to judge them, and we're quick to laugh, and we're quick to make comments and so on. And that's where we as a society needs to step up, that if someone is different and someone doesn't like what the rest of the people like, then that's fine. That's okay. Everyone will have their own preferences, and everyone will have their own perception of things.
Well, we came from World Autism Awareness Day, which was Sunday, the 2nd of April. And furthermore, we have conversations such as these, even an entire month dedicated to autism awareness. But given what you've just suggested, could we even say that we've made progress as a society in trying to bring a level of awareness and understanding as to exactly what autism is?
I did two parts to that question. The first part is, yes, to some extent we have made progress in that autism is now in the media. People are talking about it. It's in the public domain. You know, there are lots more televisions and that are covering it. There are radio programs and so on. You see articles popping up. So that's the one party. But on the side of the autistic person, there has not been any progress with the changes or with the opportunities that are supposed to be available to them. They continue to struggle on a daily basis. We continue to hear too many parents who cannot find a school for their children, who cannot afford therapy for their children. So there are two parts to it. On the side of becoming more visible and more out in the public domain, that is quite evident. But then I have to also say, autism is not, autism goes beyond one day or beyond 1 month. You know, after April, persons with autism continue to have autism. It doesn't go away. So when we highlight it in 1 month, and what are the real changes that are coming out of that? Yes, somebody might know what is autism, but does that encourage someone to change their behavior? Does that encourage a principal from a school to admit a child with autism? So there are two parts to that.
Now, something that you've just mentioned there, given somebody to change their behavior, and you've also mentioned an individual receiving therapy, somebody who is autistic. If an individual is to receive therapy and over the years that therapy progresses and they themselves make that level of progress along with it, their personality may change. Is that a possibility? And if that personality changes or evolves over time, given the therapy that they are receiving, how will that affect the relationship or that bond between siblings?
Right. So the first thing is autism doesn't go away. It's a lifelong condition. So therapy helps a person to deal with their challenges, whether it's in the area of speech or daily tasks that they might be able to get help with through occupational therapy and so on. But at the end of the day, challenges remain throughout that person's life. These challenges might decrease over time. These challenges might change. Some new ones might come up, you know, as a person, as an individual develops. So that's the first thing. It's a lifelong condition. Second thing, it's a spectrum. So it means that every single individual with autism will display different levels of challenges. No two person is the same. And it all depends, the impact of the therapy all depends on the individual. So that's the second thing. Now, that given, if a therapy is able to help a child and help a child as they grow older and they become an adult. So let's say, for example, aggressive behavior, decrease over time, then yes, that might be able to facilitate a better sibling relationship. But at the same time, whether those behaviors are there or not, a sibling, a neurotypical sibling, can still share a very close bond with their autistic brother or sister. So whether the challenges are there, whether the therapy is there or not, there is still that avenue for a close bond to develop.
Now, you've made the argument this morning that those who are autistic are equal to everyone else. They're regular human beings, just as you have alluded to. Autism doesn't have a look. Autism looks like yourself or I. And I think that is absolutely crucial and a key point. So if you've made that argument, and I understand that, could we say that equal opportunity exists in Trinidad and Tobago for those who are autistic?
No, equal opportunities don't exist, because we have to recognize first that everyone should be treated equally. An autistic person should be treated like everybody else, but they're not. So let me give you an example. Look at education. Okay, look at education. An autistic person is supposed to be able to access a free public education, just like every other children. I mean, that is one of the basic rights of a child in Trinidad and Tobago. And we don't see that happening, because from the time some schools hear that a child was diagnosed with autism, they tell you very blatantly that, sorry, we can't take them. We don't have teachers who are trained to teach them, and so on. So that's one basic right that is being denied right there. So yes, we want everybody should be treated equally, because we're all citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, whether you have autism or not. I mean, the national anthem says here, we create and raise find an equal place. So everyone is supposed to be treated equally, but our entire system and the structure that we have in place in Trinidad does not cater to those persons with autism. Yeah.
And have you seen any willingness to try and change the system? Have you seen any sort of move to try and develop and enhance the existing system so that it does become equal to all?
No, so we do have, as I mentioned earlier, and as you said, that autism is now in the public domain, and we're hearing about autism more, and that's good. I mean, it's out there, but when the real change has to come from government and from policies, the proper implementation of policies, and that is where we are lacking, and that's where we are not seeing any move towards changing it. So, for example, we have an inclusive education policy, which means that an autistic child or a child with any disability should be included within the regular school system and given the extra assistance that he or she need to be able to develop and to be able to progress and to learn and so on. But we don't see the proper implementation of that policy. So on one hand, we do have it being more visible, but on the other hand, at a national level, we don't have the more important things that we need put in place, like the access to education and access to therapy within the public healthcare system. And those things are not, they're lacking, and the government has not shown any inclination towards changing that.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dr. Radica Mahase, I want to thank you very much for joining me on AM Prime this morning. I'd actually like to end our conversation with a quote from your niece, Maya Nanan. She says, "Learn to embrace differences and welcome changes. Teach yourself to be more understanding, accepting, and patient. You must truly learn to love yourself and your autistic special needs sibling, and then you'll be invincible." Kind of like a dynamic duo. Dr. Mahase, thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much to your niece, Maya, for such a wonderful quotation.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me on your program.
Take care. Keep well.
Bye.
Bye-bye.